Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I will have a look at this chassis coming from ASUS known as the TUF Gaming GT502. Before I begin, I'd like to thank ASUS Singapore to have provided this chassis for me and to share with you. I'll first start off with the exterior itself. From the side, this is a tempered glass, it's tinted. And from the front, another tempered glass, which is tinted. And all the I/O buttons and the socket, which I'm going to talk about it later. And over here, you'll see some wordings like TUF and gaming and some additional wordings over here. At the bottom over here, this is a TUF crest whereby it will react upon ARGB effects, which I'm going to show you later. At the back, now this, instead of having a solid metal panel, ASUS have done mesh top and the bottoms. This is for better airflow, and this area in fact is for the hard disk. This area is for the PSU itself, and there are model numbers that is actually on the plate itself, which is 502 and TUF. Looking from the back itself, right, a lot of mesh holes again for better ventilation, and this is the PSU cutout, and this is the rear I/O for your motherboard to fit in, and there are a total of 8 expansion slots. And with this said, right, it has a special mechanism whereby you can unlock this, place your GPU, place your capture card or sound card. Then once you screw them in place, right, you can just close this and to lock with 2 thumb screws. Now, to remove the front panel and the side panel and the other side of the panel is pretty simple. I'll start off with the 2 panels of the side. As you can see here, there's a button over here. So when you press it, right, this will release and it will not fall off. So you can simply just remove this off. And how is this being catched to the case itself, right? If you were to take a look at the bottom, there are 2 catch, and this is pretty sturdy. One thing that ASUS have done a very good job is like the tempered glass itself, right, is in fact protected by the whole metal piece over here. See? So when you place, let's say you accidentally just knock on the floor, right, the glass will not shatter. So a very good touch from ASUS. Looking from the other side over here, same thing. Press this button and this will unlatch, and this will expose the interior from the back. Now this back panel itself doesn't flex that much, and there are fan meshes where you can take them off and to clean and to place them back, and these are all magnetic. Now looking at the front itself, right, to remove all this front panel, or should I say the tinted glass, all you need to do is just to stick your finger at the side over here, pull on it. See, it's quite simple, and you can just pick it up. Now from the top, you will notice that there are 2 Velcro straps over here. This is meant for you to carry the case. So very thoughtful. In fact, having these 2 Velcro straps, right, it helps a lot when you are relocating your case, when you place all the PC components in, right, and to fit all the panels in. It's pretty simple for you to carry the whole case instead of carrying the the massive weight, and it's pretty heavy. Now in order to take out the top panel itself, you will need to remove the Velcro stripes. And once you have actually done this, right, this top piece in fact is toolless again, just like the rest. I forgot to mention that all is actually toolless when you remove off the panels. This is in fact catched to the case with magnets. See? And you just take it out. And take note on all these 3 points over here, whereby you slot. Okay, you can see over here, there are 3 holes over here which matches this 3 knot over here. So you can align it and place the cover back. See? If you use one hand, right, you can't remove. The magnet is pretty, stick to the case itself. So you need 2 hands and to take it out. Looking at the top, again, is with holes, mesh holes. And at the other end, this is a mesh filter whereby you can remove off its magnet and to clean it and to place it back. Normally I'll just remove this based on the fact that For top, right, it's normally for exhaust or hot air from the case out. As for the measurement of this case itself, from here to here, the depth in fact is 446mm, and from the tip of this handlebar all the way to the bottom of the feet itself is 480mm. Looking at the front, the width will be from here to here 280mm. This is a mid-tower chassis whereby you can mount a ATX motherboard, an ATX motherboard, or a ITX motherboard, and the weight of this chassis is 11 kg. This is the interior of the case itself. Before I begin, I'd like to highlight something. If you notice my finger when I go through the holes over here at the bottom, or even the internal frame itself, I won't get cut. Thanks to ASUS for being mindful, whereby they deliberately done the foldings on this metal sheet itself, so you won't get hurt when you're placing the PC component. Now, I'll start off with the cutouts itself. There are a total of 8, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And these 8 cutouts, there are 4 with rubber grommets, top 2, and the side 2. Starting off with the top left corner, this is meant for you to pass through your EPS cable from your PSU to be connected to your motherboard. And this is for you to pass through your ARGB cables if you mounted fans with ARGB effects, the side or the top, through this rubber grommet. If you have a controller at the back, you can just reach the controller over there. Next will be these 2 rubber grommets at the side. The top section is meant for you to pass through your 24-pin cable from your PSU through this rubber grommet and to connect to your motherboard to supply the power to your motherboard. Next, at the bottom over here, this is whereby you connect your front I/O Type-C cable and the 3.2 cables over here and to your motherboard. The first slot over here, this is meant for you to plug your power switch, your reset switch, or even the LED, the ARGB connector to your motherboard. You can use this slot. The last slot over here is meant for your audio connector for your front I/O. And again, plug to your motherboard. Now, at the side over here, right, if you notice, there's one big hole over here. In fact, I had deliberately taken out this plate off from the bottom. This plate, in fact, are in place at the side with 4 screws, as you can see over here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So each plate is mounted with 4 screws. And what are this plate for? If you have all the plates on this location over here, right, you'll be able to connect 3 3.5-inch hard disks, 1, 2, 3, or 3 2.5-inch SSD, 1, 2, 3. And how it's been mounted on the plate itself, that's the reason why I took this out. Now, as you can see, right, there are external holes over here and internal hole over here. So for this, right, the outer hole, I should say, is meant for your 3.5-inch hard disk. As for your inner holes, right, this is meant for your 2.5-inch hard disk. So if you align it properly, right, when you flip over, see, the holes are intact. So you can screw on and to hold the SSD at the front. Now, if you were to remove this 3 plate over here, there is another location where you can place, again, 3 hard disks of each at the bottom. Now, at the bottom, this tray is removable, and to place it back, take note on these 2 notches over here. Just align it and place it down. And this lower tray here, right, is fastened by 2 screws to the bottom, which is over here and here. I've taken off the screws over here. So back to where I said, if you were to take out the platform, the 3 platform over here, you can mount it at the bottom. Again, you can place 3 pieces, and yes, you can mount 3 SSD, no problem. But for the 3.5-inch, right, do take note, you might have some clearance issue. So you can only mount 2 3.5-inch hard disks. Talking about the fan arrangement itself, I start from the bottom. Now this tray enables you to plug in 3 120mm fans, not an issue, and 2 140mm fans at the bottom. Now at the side itself, if you intend to place fans, right, make sure you remove off this panel over here so it won't block. Then you'll be able to mount 3 120mm fans. But not 140mm fans, as there are no slot allocation for 140mm fans. At the top itself, you'll be able to mount 3 120mm fans and 2 140mm fans. At the rear over here, you can only mount a 120mm fan and not a 140mm fan. Now, speaking of which, right at the top over here, as you can see, I can just take off this top tray. Just to show you, see, I can just take out this top tray. And this top tray is catched by this tool over here, a line at the back, which is over here. Then once you align, you can place it back. And this is fastened by 2 screws, which is over here and here. This and this. Now this tray itself is pretty unique, whereby this is protruding up. You can flip and turn over to have it this way. See? So you can have either way, but I would advise, if you are placing radiator at the top, right, instead of fans, do it the other way around, so that you have more clearance at the top. As for radiator mount, I will start off with all-in-one liquid cooler. As you can see over here, I'll start off from the top. Now, the top section allows you to mount 120mm AIO or 240, 360, or even a 280. Now, just an illustration, I've placed a 280 Arctic liquid freezer, as you can see over here. Now, Arctic is known for its thick radiator, which has 38mm in thickness, plus your fan itself, right, 25. Total, you will be having 63mm thickness. Now, that's the reason why earlier on I mentioned that for your top section of the tray itself, right, make sure that it's protruding out so that you give more clearance. If you were to flip, this whole thing will go down and it will hit your VRM. If you are mounting a 280, if you're mounting a 360, right, it shouldn't be a problem. Even if you do flip the top down, when this go down, right, it's alright. Now, having to say so, right, if you are fitting a 280 itself, be it Arctic Liquid Freezer 2 or other 280, right, take note on the alignment itself. If you place your AIO towards the rear itself, right, it will cover up the EPS grommet, as you can see over here, so that you're going to have a hard time plugging in the cables to your motherboard. I would advise you to shift this towards the center, or maybe a bit offset, so that your EPS cable can pass through the grommet and to plug to your EPS cable. As for RAM clearance at the top itself, right, as you can see, it's way off. It's like totally not reaching or touching the radiator itself, due to the fact that ASUS have done this so-called the top bracket to be protruding out, so that you can lift up the whole radiator and the fan up, and you will not touch your RAMs. So be it if you use a high profile RAMs or such, or RAMs that is flaring out, not an issue, you can just use. Taking a look at the front itself, as you can see, the top 280 radiator is mounted and it's taking up all the space. But good thing is that ASUS have done this top tray itself, right, you can protrude out, so it will lift the whole AIO up, giving enough clearance. In fact, as you can see, the RAM is actually not even touching the AIO or the fan itself, I mean the radiator fan. And the motherboard, in fact, the line is over here. If you can see the VRM inside, let me just try to zoom in and to shine. See, the VRM itself is not even touching the fan itself, so there are plenty of clearance. You can mount as tall, I mean the tall VRM or tall real IO, not an issue. Now for the side, do take note that I've tilted the case, whereby that is the top and this is the side, and this is the front where the IO are. Back to where the side is. Now you'll be able to mount a 240 or a 360 all-in-one liquid cooler, not an issue. But when you're mounting a 360 itself, right, please take note, make sure you remove off this bottom tray. Then let me just show you how you mount. Oh, before I show you how you mount, Make sure for 360 all-in-one liquid cooler itself, right, the radiator height, make sure it's not more than 400 millimeter, meaning to say from the bottom over here all the way to the top, not more than 400 millimeter. Now, to show you how I mount the AIO itself, as mentioned, take out the bottom tray, then with this, right, angle at one end. If let's say you want to place the hose at the bottom, angle at one end, then to leave it down. See, it fit nicely, so we can screw from the back, I mean the radiator, to the case itself. Or if you choose to put it at the hose at the top, you can slot this section over here. Always start from the top first. Once you have it in place, right, you can just leave the bottom section down and you can screw it up again. Then once you have fastened the radiator on the case itself, right, then you'll be able to place your bottom tray over here. There is another thing you need to take note when you're mounting the all-in-one liquid cooler at the side. Make sure that the thickness itself, right, won't go over 53 millimeter in tall. Reason being, right, if you were to place your graphic card, long graphic card, horizontally, this is just nice, which is the thickness of the radiator and the fan. See, there's still some clearance, which is at 53 millimeter in tall. Something you need to take note of when you're using 360 all-in-one liquid cooler, especially the Arctic Liquid Freezer 2. Now, if you have a radiator that is thickness of 38 millimeter itself, right, you can't fit the case, you see. I try to shove in at the top, it can't. Reason being, right, at the top over here, if you were to notice, right, there's a hook. So this gap here, in fact, is about 35 millimeter thick. So if you were to slot the Arctic Liquid Freezer 2, right, you can't slot at all and it will not sit. You'll be only able to use a 240. If you choose an Arctic Liquid Freezer 360, right, you can only mount it at the top, not at the side. And for those of you doing custom water cooling, right, do take note about the thickness also. So make sure that it doesn't go beyond 35 millimeter thickness. If not, you're going to have a problem. Before I talk about the mounting on the GPU itself in this PCIe slot, now if you intend to do air cooling, take note of the clearance from the IHS to the side. Make sure that the height is not more than 160 millimeter tall. If you go beyond that, right, you will not be able to close your side panel. Now for the graphic card itself, if you place horizontally or vertically itself, right, the length from here to here is 410. Now take for example this 4090 Aorus Master coming from Gigabyte. The card length is 336 millimeter in length. Now you might be thinking that, oh, I can slot in, but the problem is if you to do it horizontally, right, you can't mount at all because this is blocking. You can't slot it in. The only way you can do it is vertically, which is like that. Now, speaking of which, right, this case does provide in the accessory package this vertical mount bracket, but in order for you to fit this bracket, you will need to take out your motherboard, take out all the empty slots at the back, then to place this bracket into the slot. Then you'll be able to mount your motherboard and your graphic card. Now, another thing also to take note that it's only providing you this bracket, but it doesn't provide you with a riser cable. So this is an additional purchase that you will need to do. This is how it looks like when you mount the GPU vertically. And yes, this is a RTX 3080 TUF, as I wanted to blend in the theme with the case itself. Now, if you choose to put a 4090, not an issue, plenty of space over here. So we can just mount it vertically. And looking at the PCIe slot and the tip of the fan over here, right, there are plenty of space, not an issue. Now, there is a support bracket that comes with this case itself. I will show you the support bracket when I go through with you on the accessory box itself. I've also deliberately placed every PC component in this PC itself so that you can see that it's able to populate total of 10 120mm fans with the AIO located at the top. Why do I say this? If you were to place your AIO liquid cooler at the side, when the hose is actually at the top, you will sacrifice the top fan, as the hose will block the top fan, leaving you with two options to place 220mm fans at the rear or 140mm fans. Same goes to if you place the hose at the bottom, you will sacrifice the bottom first fan, leaving you with 220mm fans or 140mm fans at the back. So take note on this. This is the other side of the case itself. I'll start off with the top section where you see this tray over here. Now this tray is removable, and to fasten this tray itself, right, there are 4 screw holes, 1, 2, 3 and 4, and these are tightened by 4 screws which I've taken off. So once you have removed the screws itself, right, you can take this tray out. And what's this tray for? You can mount additional of 3 120mm fans or 2 140mm fans. For those of you who wanted to place radiator for custom water cooling, you can place 360, not a problem, 240, not a problem, even a 280. But the problem with Liquid AIO, whereby you have the hose attached to your radiator, if you intend to place a 360 AIO, right, make sure your hose is enough to go through this area here and to plug to your motherboard itself, as in like the processor itself, and you might need to sacrifice one of the fans allocation over here because of the hose. And if you were to place a 240 AIO, right, not an issue. The hose is long enough to reach your processor. Now on the lower left hand side, this is another hard disk area whereby you can place a 3.5 inch hard disk or a 2.5 inch SSD. Now to remove off this tray, right, is fastened by 2 thumb screw, one at the top over here and one at the bottom over here. So you just slide it out, take it out, so you can mount your hard disk. As mentioned, 3.5 inch hard disk and 2.5 inch SSD. And to place it back, make sure that you align this catch to the case and to slot it back. On the rack itself, this is where the PSU area is. As you can see, I fitted a PSU. This is at the length of 180mm. You can go all the way up to 200mm. Don't go beyond that. If you go beyond that, right, you might have issues tugging all the cables. So take note, the max length of the PSU itself, right, to place from here to here is 200mm. And you can fit a full ATX power supply, a SFX power supply, not an issue. But if you are placing a SFX power supply, right, make sure that your cable is long enough to reach the motherboard and to reach your EPS connection point over the other side, and of course your GPU cables which you need to power up your GPU. Taking a closer look on the cable management in this case itself, they provide 14 cable tie points, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 2 at the top which you can't see, and 2 at the front top which you can't see. Now if you do notice, there are velcros over here. Initially when they crimp this cables over here, right, to this, right, they are making use of this. So I've deliberately taken this out and to take the velcro off from the accessory box, and they have provided 3. I would advise you to place this velcro stripe instead of using this. And besides this, on the removable tray itself, right, there are points where you can tidy up your cables too, inclusive of at the bottom. These are a bunch of cables whereby it comes with the case. You will need to connect this to your motherboard. I will talk about this connector later as I show you together with the front I/O. I'll first start off with these 2 connectors over here. Now these are meant for ARGB connectors. This is in fact a standard 3-pin 5V ARGB connector whereby you will light up the front crest logo at the front of the case. And for this cable over here, right, this is meant for ASUS TUF own ARGB hub, and this comes with the accessory package whereby you connect this, which is 2-pin, then connect this to the hub itself, and when you toggle on the switch at the front, right, it will synchronize up with the hub itself. This is the front panel itself where you have all this button over here, the power switch, the reset switch, 2 USB 3 socket, the LED, or should I say the ARGB toggle switch, Type-C socket and a combo microphone and headphone jack. Now earlier on I've shown you all the cables over here, so I'll start off with the power and the reset switch, where you have to connect this connectors to your motherboard, which has the reset and power. Next will be this two USB 3 socket, which you will need to connect this to your USB 3.0 socket on your motherboard itself, followed by the LED switch, or should I say the ARGB switch itself. Now I've explained to you earlier the two cables. This is meant for that two cables, followed by the Type-C, which is this cable over here. You will need to connect this to your motherboard. Last but not least, this is the headphone and microphone combo jack, whereby you connect this audio connector to your motherboard. These are the accessories in the package itself, coming together with the case. Now this is the manual itself. It's pretty thick, and in this box itself, these are the things that is provided. This is the vertical bracket, or should I say the vertical mount for your GPU, whereby when you place it, right now when you place it, make sure that this the PCIe slot in, make sure this is downwards. Imagine this is the case itself, so this is downwards, so you slot it in this way, so your card will go vertical. Now speaking of which, it comes with a GPU support bracket, or should I say holder. So how this thing works is, now this is the base of it, whereby it's magnetic. See, so imagine your GPU is actually at the top over here. So if your case is pretty long, right, you can use this to support, or what I've used to illustrate the fitting of the case itself, the GPU, I make use of this. See, so just do this, and you can just use the thumb screw to screw the back just to secure it. So you can leave the lever until you find that it's levered. So imagine this is your GPU, right? You just sit down here at the front, and of course you need to tighten this so that it will sit. So imagine that this is your case itself, the base, the bottom, you tape to it, so your GPU will just sit to this. Besides this, it gives screws, a number of them. There are a total of 25 of this type of screws. This is meant for your SSD and also for your motherboard standoff, where you mount your motherboard. And of course, to adjust all the standoffs from the case itself, it gives you this standoff screw, I guess, or nut, so that you can just house it and use your screwdriver to unscrew the standoff for the motherboard in your case. And it comes total of 20 of this kind of screws. These are for bigger hard disk, 3.5 inch, and etc. And of course, 3 Velcro stripe, which I shown you earlier, to secure the mesh cable at the pillar there. 8 zip tie, and this I've shown you that when you connect. Now I've mentioned that it's using ASUS ARGB hub, but if you do connect this, right, this is actually a 2-pin at this end, right. In fact, I've tested with using this Gurley ARGB hub. It does work, because Gurley itself, right, has this switch over here, if you can see. So what I need to do is just to plug this in. Then this is to that case cable, the 2-pin. Then you can toggle the switch on the case itself, which I'm going to show you later. Here comes the moment of truth. As you can see, it's lit up. I've pieced up the whole PC and going to turn it on. And it does light up everything. It's booting up. The RAMs are running. Now, as I mentioned to you, the crest over here, in fact, is shining, or should I say following up the effects itself. And as for the LED toggle button, as I was mentioning, or the ARGB toggle button, see, it reacts. As you can see, the crest is following the fans. and you can cycle the pattern. Nicely done. The impression and thought about this ASUS TUF Gaming GT502 case, when I unbox it, it feels very solid. And when I place it on the table, it's even more sturdy than I thought. And it does give me a picture of a tank. Reason of me saying so, look at the feet itself. All the 4 feet are in fact metal, and I was quite surprised. And it resembles of a tank track. So this does give me a feel of M113, I should say. If I were to swivel to the front and to show you, right, you understand where I'm coming from. It really looks like one. I mean, at the back hatch where they unload the men. Okay, back to the case itself. First off, what I like about this case, starting from the top, there are 2 Velcro stripes over here, which is easy for you to carry the case around even with your PC component inside. Next thing will be the panels itself. They are all toolless, be it the side, the front and the top. So no screwdrivers is needed to unscrew screws and to take out the panel, which is good. Next thing will be the tempered glass itself. It's enforced with this metal from the top and the bottom. In fact, it's the whole casting that is holding the tempered glass, which is well thought of. Now, speaking of which, right inside the case itself, when you work inside the case, all the edges are rounded so that you won't cut your fingers or to accidentally hurt yourself. That's one thing good. Now, next thing will be the tray from the top and the bottom itself. I can remove off the top tray and to mount the Liquid AIO or even fans before I place it back to the case itself. And same goes to the bottom. The only thing that I do not like is when you mount the 360 AIO, or should I say a liquid cooler at the side, either the top front fan or the bottom front fan, you will need to sacrifice. Reason being, right, the hose of your AIO is sticking out. So imagine it's at the bottom, you can't fit your bottom fan at all. Same goes to the top. If your hose is actually at the top, your front top fan, you will not be able to mount. And another thing is that for the vertical mount bracket, right, before you can mount the motherboard itself, you have to mount the vertical mount bracket first before you mount the motherboard. If you were to mount your motherboard and decided to go vertical, right, you can't. You have to dismount your motherboard and to mount the vertical bracket itself. Looking at the front, as I mentioned to you, it looks like a tank M113, the back catch that is actually dropped off and the troopers coming out. So it looks like that, I mean, to me. And looking at the panel itself, right, there's one flaw over here. If I were to turn off the ARGB, okay, let me just turn off. See, there are no light indications saying that it's power on. So I wish that this have some LED lit up when it's powering up. If you have ARGB RAMs, of course you know that the system is powering up. But if imagine that this whole build is without ARGBs, then you're gonna have a problem knowing whether your PC is starting up or not. Now, besides that, right, I've forgotten to mention that there is a bottom fan mesh filter, which is the bottom fan is actually intaking the cool air. So these are the dust that is collected over here, and you can just remove and to wash it and to place it back. See, placing back is pretty simple, straightforward. There you have it, the ASUS TUF Gaming GT502. I hope you guys have actually enjoyed what I've shared with you, and for those of you who are actually new to my channel, welcome to my channel. And if you like my content, do remember to subscribe and to click on the notification bell button. Till then, take care, goodbye, see ya.